Today we bring to you yet another Redline. This is from that box that I made from the last video, which featured the Monza. And you can see this one has got the same treatment as Monza. Paint. Lots of red paint. I'm not sure if it's enamel or what it is, but it's on the wheels, it's on the inside of it, it's all over the windshield. It's a mess. Now, I didn't know what this originally was until I stripped the paint and found a hint of green. So that tells me it's a Khaki Kooler, which is here. This is what this originally looked like when it was brand new. So you can see it's came a long way. We're going to start out like we normally do, which is by center punching those rivets. This particular model, I believe, is 76, 77 is when they released this, but it has the smaller rivets that don't have the center in them, so you have to get a reference point, otherwise your drill will just walk away. And then we go ahead and drill it out with our .050 drill bit. And we do the same thing to the back. And this is sped up. I go a lot slower. Then we take our larger drill bit and go ahead and get rid of the head of that. Now these were a little fatter, so I had to bend it a little bit, and you can see it just comes right apart. And again, this one has mud in it, and of course paint everywhere. You see it's on the seats, on the inside of the windshield, the outside of the windshield, inside of the body, and then of course even in the chassis. We'll go ahead and start to strip this. Use the aircraft stripper, and had to use a lot of it. I kept the wheels on there because they're not usable, and I figured the cleaner would pretty much eat away the wheels, which it did, but not as much as I thought it would have. But here's what we ended up with. Body's in pretty rough shape, and two of the wheels fell off during that whole thing. See all kinds of lines. It's probably the roughest body that I've ever dealt with on these videos. I'm going to go ahead and rip those other wheels and axles out of this. See, it's giving me a little bit of trouble. Now here's the windshield. I'm taking some of the turtle wax polishing compound, and we're going to go ahead and start to polish the heck out of this thing. Again, we're using that soft cloth wheel. I'll put a link in the description below of all the tools that I use in this video. And then try to get the inside. You can see some of the red is coming off on the wheel, so it's working a little bit, but it doesn't work too well. Now I'm taking some lacquer thinner with a Q-tip and just getting the inside. Eventually I resort to sandpaper. I start with 1200 grit and work my way up to 3000 grit. You can see it looks a lot better. We're going to go ahead and paint the interior. Now I couldn't get all that red off, so I'm just painting it flat black just like we did the Monza. I mentioned this body is in really rough shape. There's a lot of flashing around the windows, the windshield, and also the back doors, and you'll see me get to those in just a moment. And again, these are for a 4-year-old, so I'm not going to get it perfect. They're never going to be perfect, but we get it a little bit better. I don't want to spend more than an hour on these because he's going to just chip them up. This is mostly for your viewing pleasure, so to show you what you can do in just an hour's time. If you want to spend more time on these, go for it, make a video about it. But personally, I'm not going to do that. And we're going to go back to the chassis. So we're going to go ahead and tap it out. We're using our 256 tap. And there will be a link in the description below, again, of all the tools that I use in this video. 256 button head screws. Also, there's a link to those as well. So if you put a comment in there asking where to get this or what size, please look in the description. All of these tools are in there. Everything you need, from the stand, the rotating stand, to the screws, everything is in the description. I'm going to go ahead and throw some primer on this. Now this is Model Masters primer. My first time using this, usually I use like Rust-Oleum, and I like this primer really well. It went on smooth and didn't have to do a whole lot of cleanup afterwards. I was kind of surprised. It took away a lot of the imperfections, but there's still some. We're going to go ahead and dip the windshield into the Future Shine. Now just the windshield, because remember, the actual interior is part of this windshield. There it is. Not dry, you'll see it later. Now we need some donor wheels, and some of you are probably going to flip your lid. This is the donor wheels. It's a very nice casting, but I needed the wheels, so we're going to go ahead and rip it apart and yank the wheels out of it. Also, one nice thing about these wheels on this particular car I don't really have to make custom axles for it. I can cut them out of there and slide them into the van. We're going to go ahead and clean the chassis. We're just using a brass brush, no water or anything. It's not too harsh, and it does a good job of cleaning it. It's not going to remove any material. It's brass. We're going to go ahead and use our markers again, and there's a link in the description below to these. We're going to paint the grille black, turn signals, the headlights we're going to leave the gray, and we're also going to paint the bumpers. Back to those axles. Now again, this one does not have interior holding it down, just like the last one, so we're going to have to super glue those axles into place. I actually took this one a step further because of the body. I went ahead and wet sanded after the primer had dry. I think I started with 2500 grit and went up to 3200. I forget the exact. But there it is. Looks pretty good. Not perfect. Far from it. Also applied some spot putty just to there's a couple divots in there I wanted to get out of the actual body. And here we're using one of the chrome markers. Now, I did not care for this marker. A lot of people recommended it, but it didn't seem to go on so smooth. We went ahead and painted it with Model Masters, like an army green, and clear coated afterwards. Now it's time for reassemble. Go ahead and put your interior in. There's actually a post for it. Kind of neat. That windshield, in my opinion, turned out great. And next we'll go ahead and flip it over and install the base into the actual casting. Put our screws in, and then we'll be done. Now this one took about 48 minutes to do. Now that's actual work. Probably a little less, but more if you include drying time. Now I obviously don't sit here and wait down in the basement for it to dry. I'll go do something, and maybe the next day or hours later I'll come and do something else. So I'm not sitting here waiting on it. But that windshield was probably the majority of the work. It took quite a bit of time to get that kind of where it needed to be. I would say in 10 minutes, which maybe 15. I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but to spend on a little tiny windshield. And that was time that I could have used to actually polish this paint job. Polish the clear, that would have really smoothed it out and give it a nice gloss finish. Now these markers I've been using, I'm not 100% sold on them yet. They seem to be really good, but they kind of blot up a little bit. They're not real smooth, and that might be just my technique. I've tried to kind of paint with them and then dab with them, and I think the dabbing may be the way to go. Now, if you did watch the last video, the Monza, which there will be a link at the end of the video, there'll actually be an overlay of that video, and my grandson messed up the clear coat. Well, if you look closely, maybe not even closely, because keep in mind, this is really, really close to a camera. Hard to see any of these imperfections with the naked eye, but this DSLR camera shows everything. But the good news is it can be fixed very easily. You just take a razor blade, cut off that excess clear coat, and you may or may not be able to see it, or I could just simply clear coat over that one section again. So I guess the 4-year-old did it the first time, and now the 42-year-old did it. It was my turn. What can I say? But just as a reminder, this is what we started out with. A complete mess. Red everywhere. The thing that was the hardest, it may not seem, is that windshield. I am really surprised at how well the windshield turned out. It's not perfect, but if you look at it right there, the silver, the red, the blue, it had blue, silver, and red paint on it, to what it looks like now. Please feel free to post any questions or comments. Look in the description below. I'll have links to almost everything I use in this video, as mentioned earlier. And if you haven't already, follow me on Instagram. I typically post pictures before the build. So, like 3 days ago, I posted a picture of this actual van, red, and then I posted, I think, another picture of mid-progress, and then, of course, the end. And that'll do it for this one. Please check out my other videos, and as always, thanks for watching.